Good morning, and welcome to another brand new edition of MICAT Hour. MICAT Hour is that program that highlights, the various activities of the week that were making headlines in the news. Activities that are relative to the government of the Republic of Liberia, and some activities, that make really good headline news for the country. For instance, on yesterday, Liberia passed the MCC scorecard. The scorecard were published, and Liberia made a pass. This is something that the government has been working towards for quite some time now, and it was quite remarkable that the government of Liberia, and the country generally, made a pass. Some would say that this is quite a major milestone. This is momentous. There's been the various kinds of description of the kind of achievement this marks for the country, because this means that the country stands a chance. It doesn't automatically get compact, but it stands a chance of winning a compact. A compact is the large scale MCC grant. That's the Millennium Challenge Corporation grant. You know that it was the grant in 2016 that helped with the rehabilitation of Mount Coffin Hydro, right? So this time around, the second compact will be something, close to $500 million. That is, assuming Liberia reaches the compact point, and that determination is going to be made later. But the fact is that Liberia has scored quite significantly. It's passed, and this is the first time Liberia has achieved really high marks since the MCC started publishing its scorecards. We passed 12 of the indicators. This hasn't happened before. Even when we won compact in 2015, 2016, it wasn't 12 indicators. So yeah, this is quite significant. That's some of the things we're going to be talking about on this platform today. We're also going to be talking about the president's trip to Morocco. The president has, went on to Morocco to attend the Mide's 14th forum. It's a forum that is being dubbed the Davos of Africa, that brings together business leaders, leaders on the continent, civil society actors, in order then to ponder on the different geopolitical challenges confronting the continent and all of that. So those are some of the things that are being discussed as we speak, in Morocco. The president was serving as a keynote speaker. Yeah, so at that forum. We're also going to be talking about, one of an opposition leader referred to the state of the country currently as a crisis. It was quite unfortunate. He was talking about the fact that the president probably needs to be seated in the executive mansion at all times. He probably doesn't have to travel out of the country to make the country's case. Liberia doesn't exist on an island. The president has to multitask. You can work at home and work abroad. As a matter of fact, most of the development assistance that we've had recently, they've come from the fact that the president has made these trips. So it was quite unfortunate that the ANC politician Larry Yonkwe would talk about a crisis and say, why is the president traveling? We're going to be talking about during the course of this show. We're also going to be talking about the state of the rice crisis, plus the fact that Agriculture Minister Janine Cooper, that is, appeared before the legislature this week to talk about the agriculture sector, but specifically rice production vis-a-vis subsidy for import and all of that. So it promises to be a really, really great show. You can't afford to miss today's edition of MICAT Hour. As always, the program is really, really jam-packed. My name is Boyka M. Fofana. Shortly, we're going to be having my colleague in the studio, Daniel Nooks Thomas, will be joining us during the course of the show. You're listening to MICAT Hour. Welcome back to MICAT Hour. Like we said, Liberia passed, finally, Liberia passed the Millennium Challenge Corporation scorecard. What that means, a lot of people don't know what the NCC is. The Millennium Challenge Corporation is a U.S. government, you know, uh, development aid or organization that they develop. It's independent of the U.S. government, but it has actors on its board that are, of course, part of the U.S. government. It has a nine-member board that consists of, somebody from if I think it's the Secretary specifically of State of the U.S. State Department, and it also has other major U.S. actors there. But it was created during the administration of President George Bush. He was tying U.S. aid to specific benchmarks, so to some um, indicators in developing countries, because U.S. is a major is a major donor to developing countries. So and they are concerned about certain things in these developing countries, such as human rights, the level of free speech and all of that. So they wanted to have a set of benchmarks which were carefully, organized and communicated to these countries and what have you. And so they developed the MCC, and ever since then, a lot of countries have been aspiring, to meet the different benchmarks that the MCC sets. Liberia's really strive sometime in 2008. You can pass several levels before reaching the compact point, and when you reach compact, that is when you get the large development aid. That was what Liberia reached in 2015-16. But that was after many years of trying. They try and they reached something they call the threshold. I think that was in 2008 or so when they got a small scale grant. It basically was saying, well, this is a country that's demonstrated, some intention to meeting the different set of criteria set by the MCC. And so, they gave them a little token of development aid that was specifically, I think, directed towards, the education sector, women enrollment in school and all of that. And Liberia struggled for many years after that to actually reach the compact completion point. It got it in 2015, 2016. There's been all kinds of different commentaries about how Liberia, achieved that mark. Some other pundits. In fact, I saw this reading somewhere, said that because at the time the MCC they got about 20 indicators that are jotted in three categories. They call it ruling justly category, the investing in people and economic freedom. On each of those areas, they got different sets of category. For instance, on a ruling justly, there's something called political rights. That the country must meet. They have civil liberty, control of corruption, government effectiveness, the rule of law, and all of those different things, are listed there. And then on investing in people, there is a category. There are categories called immunization, public expenditure on health, public expenditure on primary education, and a host of different things. So those are the different indicators that you must meet. So it's about 20. They have about 20 indicators, and a country must achieve at least 10 to be declared, to pass. That's what it entails. If you reach 10 of the different indicators, it means that you've passed as a country. And that is what Liberia met before. But this time around, since the MCC started publishing its scorecards, Liberia has achieved its highest mark by passing 12 of the 20 indicators. 12 of the 20 indicators. The last time we came shy of passing, last year we came shy of passing, just because I think we had 9 of the 20 indicators, so we didn't reach the 10 benchmarks. But this time around, we added additional 3, including, and guess what? We even passed the, how do they call it? Control of corruption category. So this is something that is quite remarkable because the fight against corruption has been quite topical lately. A lot of people have been talking about that. It came, the discussion ensued specifically following the whole global Magnitsky designations of a few Liberian officials. That's when, in fact, some Liberians even got to know about the whole Magnitsky thing. Apparently, they might have forgotten that the Magnitsky, the first set of actions that were taken in Liberia, nailed the Unity Party chairman, Vani Sherman. He was amongst the first set of people that was penalized in 2018. I guess what? The Magnitsky Act came into being in 2017, and so it was still penalizing people for corruption that were committed just around that time, but they could not go as far back because of, there was something in law that the people can talk about expo facto and all of that. But yeah, so that was when a lot of Liberians started to talk about it. And the same Magnitsky, is a sort of a U.S. government instrument that sanctions, foreign actors for corruption and all of that. And so we were sanctioned. And so it brought the whole discussion of corruption to the fore. And having another U.S. government agency, this time an independent one that uses third parties to document, of course, their own set of criteria and other, indicators to document some of the actions the government is taking. It was quite a paradox, for a lot of people, to see that one agency to say, well, the government's corrupt, and then another U.S. agency is saying, well, you passed the corruption indicator. I think we probably need some interpretation and explanation for that, maybe from the U.S. folks themselves. But basically, this is such a huge such a huge development for Liberia. It shows that following initial struggles from 2018 when the government came to power, because Liberia, President George Weah came to power against several odds. Firstly, it was the global economic slump of the 2017, 2018. Then plus, there was a slump in the price of our primary commodities on the international market. Liberia primarily gets its foreign exchange capital from, rubber, steel, iron ore, and other cash crops that we have. But the primary ones are those. And those ones, the price for them on the international market dropped. And so we could not get that. So that was leading to a crisis already. Then UNMIL left, so all of the different sort of money that was flowing in the Liberian economy, because UNMIL had a budget of almost $500 million, right? So if an institution has a budget that is almost $500 million, we sort of serve as a parallel budget, to the government's own. The government budget was somewhere around the same $500 million. So that means that close to $1 billion flowing, sort of circulating in the Liberian economy. Some would say it's just a budget, but eventually the money came. That was the budget that was set, but then the money came, and these people had to spend the money, in various sectors. Some would say, in fact, the UNMIL money was spent specifically in the service sector. So you will have a lot of cap men saying, "Oh yeah, my man, UNMIL around so enjoy," or a lot of hotel, owners, or maybe how do they call them? Guest houses and what have you. Or maybe people will rent a bit, or some of the people who were saying, sort of sell drinks and other places, So that's why when that money, when they left, obviously that money dried up, So those were the struggles that the administration faced early on, and so we had some false starts, but then we sort of got it together later on. But then again, we were hit by COVID. So you see, we've been up against a lot of different odds. The government of Liberia has been up against a lot of different odds. Whether it is the challenges, which by the way, President Sirleaf herself warned against in 2017, and said there were going to be tougher times ahead, because she knew. Because first, Liberia was still lingering. Liberia was still suffering from the lingering effects of Ebola. Ebola brought the whole economic growth, the semblance of economic growth that Liberia was experiencing, to a total halt. It was a grounding halt, zero growth, that we started to experience in 2014, 2015, 2016. And so we were still grappling with that up to 2018, and then COVID struck. Like the rest of the world, everybody started facing challenges and what have you. So yeah, but in spite of all of that, we've achieved some level of macroeconomic stability now. What that means is that the economy generally is becoming stable, and this is not something that we are saying alone, but also the international monetary funds, they themselves have said. And in fact, they didn't stop there. They went as far as praising the government's recent passage of the new, revised LACC Act. So they said it's such a remarkable measure that the president will be asking the LACC, or the Liberal Anti-Corruption Commission, to have prosecutorial powers, but not just that, but that the commissioners that will be appointed independent of the presidential authority. So they praised the government, the international community. So it was quite surprising that the only people that didn't praise the government were some of the local, civil society actors, who you would think will have a better appreciation and understanding of these reforms that are taking place because they've experienced them and all of that. But people from overseas, who, by the way, are looking at the global picture, because they'll be looking at, say what is happening in other countries vis-a-vis what is happening in Liberia, and they compare it. Say maybe what is happening in Liberia is, it's kind of better considering what is happening in other countries. So if this person can muster the political will and say, oh, let's give the LACC prosecutorial power, let's make sure that their commissioners will be appointed independently. There will be a separate board and all of that, and these are things that came, by the way, out of a meeting that was, I understand, that there is, I'm fully cognizant of the Supreme Court ruling, sort of putting a heart to certain segment of it, but that is the democratic process. If somebody feels aggrieved, they go to court and the court takes a decision. You see how democratic our country is now? So the legislature can pass a law, the president enacts it, the Supreme Court can stop it. So these are some of the things for which we were graded quite heavily by the MCC, recently released report that, I would imagine that is under political rights. So it shows that Liberia is doing quite well, in terms of democracy and all of that. So we should be applauding the president, firstly, but the actors that work on this. Finance Minister Samuel Twe, he's been so dedicated to this process for quite some time. He got a lot of bad rep in the media initially when he took over the mantle of authority at the Ministry of Finance. People started to criticize him, and all of that. But it seems as if he's doing quite a lot. He's been doing quite a lot recently. Firstly, it was signing on to this whole, IMF credit facility scheme. When other countries were doubting whether or not they should, Ghana, as an example, they didn't make the decision at the time that we decided to make the decision. And you can see what's happening in Ghana. But Liberia made a decision then. We are way ahead. And by the way, this is not the first time. Yeah, some other people say, why you had to go to IMF? But the Liberian government struggled, even under President Sirleaf. There was a point, I think, in 2011 to, between then, they were also on an IMF program, essentially helping to service the economic quagmire they were in at the time, and I hear a lot of people saying, oh, we had to go to the IMF because we could not service the wage bill and all of that. Look, come on. In 2006, when the Unity Party took over, the wage bill was at $100 million. That wage bill rose to $290 million from 2006 before the new government took over. So there are more than almost 200% increment. And remember this whole right-sizing and downsizing something scheme that they took on in 2006 when the Unity Party came to power? Well, it was right under the nose of Joseph Boakai. He was there at the time. He said nothing. But by the way, he's blaming all of the odds of the Unity Party now on his boss. For him, he was an innocent bystander. That's how he plays his card right now. But that's what happened in 2006, 2007. And so when they start talking about, we allow the wage bill to climb to $300 million and all of that. Firstly, the wage bill was around that, hovering around that when the George Weah government came on. A couple of things made that to happen, and erroneously, they will say, oh, that because we put on partisans and all of that, but that's not the case. There was something called the Health Pool Fund, that the international community were financing, for health workers. I think it was about $20 million that were taking care of that. That dried up when George Weah came there, because people said, well, you people have moved from a point of consolidation of your peace now to stability. I mean, I think you can take care of your own affairs. And so we had that responsibility before George Weah. I mean, it fell on George Weah, that is. Also, there were volunteer teachers, there were new teachers added to the payroll and all of that. So, the wage bill obviously claimed somewhat. And so that was the struggle that we grapple with. But they cannot say the same, unfortunately. And some of the times they sort of gloss over that. They don't want to talk about it. The fact that the wage bill used to be around $100 million and then claimed to about $290 million, essentially filling the civil service with partisans and all of that. They fill the civil service with partisans. I mean, there are a lot of professional people out there. I don't want to, brush everybody with, use one, brand everybody, that is. But sorry, I'm being distracted right now. My colleague just walking. But anyway, yeah. So there are a lot of professional people in there, but there are also partisans that were included on the list heavily. And so when they're talking about, and acting all sanctimonious, like they are the ones who knew all of the different processes and they know the solutions to Liberia. Suddenly, only now that they know that they understand all of the different solutions to our problems, just because they are not in power, that they can conveniently blame all of the problem on the former president, that the vice president was serving as an innocent bystander, is just unfortunate, but it also shows deceit. Anyway, let's come back to the fact that Liberia won. Liberia has reached such a major milestone, passing the MCC scorecard, let me tell you some of the indicators there. So there are three categories, three major categories. We call it ruling justly, investing in people, and then economic freedom. So under the ruling justly category, we have political rights, we have civil liberty, we have control of corruption, we have government effectiveness, we have rule of law, we have freedom of expression. Under the investing in people, we have immunization, public expenditure on health, public expenditure on primary education, girls' primary education, girls' secondary education, natural resource protection. And then under the economic freedom, there is the regulatory quality, the land rights, access to credit, employment opportunity, which by the way I understand is a new category, trade policy, inflation, fiscal policy, and gender in the economy. Guess what? Out of the time Liberia have been trying to pass all of these different indicators, we've come close and not passed. I mean, even during the administration of President Sirleaf, we've come close and not passed. Remind you now, let me tell you something about this whole darling girl phenomenon during the Sirleaf administration. She was firstly Africa's first female president. She had a lot of goodwill in the international community because she was the first, but also because she had a great network in Washington, D.C. and other places. And then she made some sort of good, had a good rapport with the ambassadors here, most of whom were females, especially from the U.S. and what have you. And so there was this, all girls thing and what have you. And so when she struggled, when they struggled at some point in 2000 between that time to get the compact, they gave them some sort of consolation. They called it the threshold, MCC threshold, and say, yeah, we're gonna put some money. At least you've shown some goodwill towards reaching this thing and other things. So we'll give you some money. I think that was in 2008 or 2009 for girls' education and what have you. And then following Ebola crisis, because the U.S. themselves were here to help us with Ebola. They fought, with us, with Ebola, along with other countries. And so 2014, our whole economy came to really a grinding halt. And so some of the pundits said, well, maybe one of the things that could revive the Liberian economy is if they reach this whole, compact thing with the MCC. So there are a lot of different narratives online there that you can see that will tell you that the whole achievement, which by the way we should applaud them for, but if they try to like trash the new one that we just got, so we can go back to how exactly they got theirs, and so that's what I'm saying. So it was basically intended to complement the U.S. government efforts here, the international community and what have you, and say, well, let's give it to them. At least they've reached a certain threshold, which was 10, by the way. But guess what? We've reached, we've passed 12 indicators, 12 indicators, including the control of corruption. Daniel.
First of all, let me say good morning, Puakai. Good morning to my dear young colleagues here in studio. And a pleasant good morning to Liberians. It's awesome being back here today. And I'm excited because we have been able to score bigly regarding this MCC, compact, Millennium Compact Challenge that Liberia, in 2018 we started. I just want to say, if you look at part of the scorecards that we see here, if you look at employment opportunities, you see that it's a high reflection that even we passed in those areas.
Yeah.
And many a times, some of the arguments that have been put forth by some of our opposition political leaders is the fact that this government has been unable to create employment opportunities. So I kind of ask, how then have we been able to pass within that segment? You should come to understand also that when people are considering an aspect of employment, they are basically not looking at the number of employed jobs that government creates within itself. They tend to look at the commercial bank lendings in terms of creation and augmentation of other companies and businesses as it relates to our economy. So, owing to the fact that we have this very great result coming up at this point in time, just at the honors of our elections, it means for us as Liberians that we should appreciate this administration more, and we need to collectively put our hands together and work towards making things better. But 2 days ago, I spent 3 hours of my time on TikTok has become a new social media sensation, and I was surprised by the fact that Liberians in America, in fact in the diaspora, they've organized several political forums on TikTok that has been seriously misinformed with regards to what the president and his administration has been doing. So I was opportune to visit 2 of these platforms and was able to provide some of the very information you see here today. Interestingly, even the issue of the compact came up. And I said to them, it is obvious this time around, Liberia is going to score high. So looking forward, 500 million being invested in our economy at a point in time is going to do us great justice. So yeah, congratulations to His Excellency President Dr. George Weah. Congratulations to the erudite Minister of Finance and all of his other colleagues that has made this a progressive progress.
So just before you walk in, I was just talking about how a paradox that is. That one, U.S. entity will grade Liberia, and say basically we're not doing well with corruption and all of that. But then another U.S. entity, is also saying, well, we managed to control corruption and all of those different. So it's such, it's paradoxical. It is contradictory. It doesn't set a fair picture. It makes us wonder what exactly that we need to do, or what exactly the case is, because these aren't different institutions from different countries. These are institutions, of course, different, but from the same country, operate on the same system. And I would think they use the same sort of yardstick to measure corruption. Otherwise, I'll be surprised if they're done, because they operate on the U.S. State Department and all of that. So, those are things. It just leads me to ponder. I wouldn't want to offer any opinion on this at this stage because, given our own background and all of that. But it just leaves one to ponder what exactly is the case.
I think for me, you're right. So this is a very serious. When I saw the results yesterday, and I kind of look back at how the diplomat continuously, highlights the issue of corruption in our society, and then coming up with this, it reminds me of 2008. when I went to the U.S. Embassy for the first time for a visa, I had the opportunity to go and address, at the time, 2008, I was in Stella Maris then, to go and address a forum. And I had done some work. Before then, I used to work with the DSTV. And I had done, you know, a restructuring of the entire cablings and other stuff there in the U.S. Embassy. And the guy, or the counselors then responsible, were people that I knew personally. But when I got there, at the point in time, owing to the fact that I was also one of the leading student, or advocate at the U.S. Embassy National Student Program, but I was surprised that I was denied that visa by very individuals I knew. Not that.
No, I mean, let's not.
No, I'm coming.
Yeah.
I'm trying to give a scenario. It's not harmful. It's not a harmful scenario.
Yeah, I mean,
It's just I'm just trying to speak to the mood. Sometimes the issue of people making decisions outside of what the country says is on the basis of people's mood sometimes. Okay, how you feel about a particular situation in the country and you express it, it's not how your country feels.
No, I'm sure it was not. I mean, I wouldn't go as far as saying probably it was the mood at the time. I would just urge that maybe the different points should be harmonized so that we understand better. Because one of the things we want to do as a government is to first we obviously want to listen to our international partners, specifically our
that's what we've been doing.
Our foremost bilateral partner, the
That's
US.
what we've been doing.
So that we can act on some of their points of concerns, like the president has said. Especially when senior officials of the Liberian government were sanctioned, the government did put out a statement, saying that they consider that very grave, especially coming from the U.S. and that the U.S. position is weighty, and so those officials resigned, and the government, basically said it was going to take actions, some action following that and whatever. Sorry, I'm sort of trying to load. Yeah. Anyway, yeah. So. The kind of point I would be making would be basically let the different points be harmonized so that it gives us a better understanding of where we need to focus as a country.
But Baka, sorry, I still come back to this. If you look at in years past before the June 7 and even after June 7, there were schools of Liberians, especially political oppositions that left here and went to Washington to engage the different congressional members on the issue of imposition of sanctions on Liberia. Mm-hmm. Only a few who apparently never had a deeper insight of the political progress being made by this administration. Mm-hmm. At some point in time, we're listening to those people. But the United States of America, as our traditional ally, a nation that we are trekking after in terms of policy and decisions, we come up to say, look, the government of Liberia has passed on the scorecard of the issue of fighting corruption. This tells you that there is a segmentation of people, you understand, who are trying to push different interests at different levels with the U.S. But the good thing is, we have always listened as a government, and we'll continue listening to ensure that the lives of our people are improved. So all of these political sentiments being expressed by some of our opposition political leaders to undermine the hard work of this administration, it's not going to work for that. At the end of the day, if the U.S. had come up to say today that we are now winning the war against corruption in terms of putting in facets of policies that are going to help in tackling, corruption, then you will say, well, all of those advocacies those guys have been pushing were real, but unfortunately they're not. And I think we're still doing better, and then we need to look at this as a big win. In all of the attributes on the scorecards, we need to look at this issue of the great scores on corruption as a big win for us as a government. It's a clear indication.
Yeah, my internet is really giving me trouble right now. I'm trying to load the score, but
I have it here.
But there are a couple of things that we passed. I want to also talk about. For instance, okay, good. We passed 2003, yeah, good. We passed inflation category under, economic freedom. Uh-huh. Under the economic freedom, yeah, we passed the inflation category. And basically, this was something that eluded us before because, remember that in 2019, 2020, 2021, we're having, hyperinflation to an extent, runaway inflation.
Inflation
Inflation had gone as high as almost 30%. Uh-huh. Everybody were complaining about things, prices going up and what have you.
Yep.
But then the government took some macroeconomic stance, changed the governor of the central bank, put in place some monetary and fiscal policies that reduced inflation quite dramatically. It was one of the steepest reduction in inflationary level in history. From that level, within a year, we came to something around 7%. So it is under double digit. It is under double digit now. It used to be double digit. It was coming as high as 30%. So we are graded for that. And other things. Our trade policy. Our gender in the economy,
Gender,
land
exactly.
rights.
Yes.
Access to credit. All of these are under economic freedom, employment, political rights,
Yes.
and this, by the way, concerns how freely people associate with the political parties, how freely they express themselves and their political views and what have you.
Civil liberty.
We passed that. We passed civil liberty, how we respect fundamental freedoms and all of that. Control of corruption category, we passed that. Essentially it looks at the grand and petty corruption as well, using different indicators. We passed that. We passed the rule of law, how people adhere to the rules and the regulations of the country, how they respect the laws of the country. We also passed the freedom of information, that one part of the Liberia era that will go as high as 88%, because, all of the different stakeholders have said Liberia is doing quite well as far as freedom of the press is concerned. So anybody criticizing, Liberia in that area, they're just being disingenuous. Some of the times I hear the politicians will come, you chase after this generally. Everybody looking at things can see it fairly, man. You won't criticize the president, criticize it on something different. People wake up in the morning. Some of the times I would think they go as far as, sort of straddling the line of abusing the rights, but they allow it happen. That's how you engender and foster the democratic culture that is existing in Liberia, Liberia's democratic credentials. So we continue to pass that category, and we did well again under this health expenditure. There's continues to be marginal increment in the budget for health, and we also spending on some of those different indicators. By the way, that the Liberian government took on, like I was saying earlier, some of the things that made the wage bill to claim is the fact that we took on new health workers, plus the fact that we increased the pay of doctors. Under the previous administration, the pay of doctors was not increased, was not high as it is now. And I challenge anybody on this. The pay of doctors, the threshold that we set for doctors, wasn't as high as it is today. So those are things.
But even besides doctors, you look at, there were teachers, in fact, public schools teachers who worked voluntarily 12 years in this country, and maximum $7,000 Liberian dollars.
Yeah.
But when we came, we took the responsibility to give them a decent wage.
So even if some of the politicians trying to be disingenuous, they don't recognize that because they're politicking as usual, which is quite, it's part of the game. Not unfair, but it's part of the game of politics. So we passed that whole. So can you imagine we passed 12 indicators, and I see some of the politicians, when something good happen for your country, praise it. Come out and say, well, the country is doing well now. Say thank you for once. Regardless of the different political divide you may find yourself, you may be on Paul's side or Mary's side, but when something happen good for the horse, say thank you. And that is what I see a lot of Liberian politicians not doing currently. So the MCC scorecard came out yesterday, but they finally still gonna wait to this. They say, after 5 years. Look, but how many times the United Party passed the MCC?
But that's a big question.
So let's have a call. They were there 12 years.
That's a big question.
So do you want to talk about that? Let's talk about that and all of that. And by the way, what did they even do with the money they got? So they got about, say, let's say $257 million. It was dedicated towards Liberia banning constraint because the main intent of the whole grant that you get from the U.S. is to, remove the country from, stimulate economic growth, thus reducing poverty. So basically, that's the intent. And Liberia, there's been all kinds of studies done that, the two major binding constraints are rules, development, and energy. And that's what, by the way, the government has been focused on. But They got $250 million. I mean, if we had gotten just a little bit of that, because with the little we've gotten, you see what happened on the CLSG front. But if we had gotten some of that money, probably the story would have been different. But $257 million, most of it used to rehabilitate the hydro that didn't, that spoiled a few years later, started having issues again. They have to repair some of the turbines, and all of those different stuff and what, So, I mean, then some of the times when people say, oh, what did they do and this and that, they're not the right sort of messengers, to say, oh, look at what we did and we can do better. Look at what we're doing with CLSG, by the way. When we came, the CLSG, I'm talking about the West Africa Power Pool, something that Liberia recently signed on to in Ivory Coast. When we came, that project had not even fully taken off the ground. It was less than 10% completed. And I'm not talking about, this is not politicking, I'm talking about what Mohamed Sharif said, the CEO of the project. He's based in Cote d'Ivoire. He said it was President George and we had that moved that project up to 90% completion before we recently signed.
Yep.
Now if you move across the country, you see that lines are being, the transmission lines are being connected all over the place. There are substations being created, whether it is in